If you've never done any proper kit bashing, why not try and learn on a 25-year-old metal model?
And I can't afford to fuck it up, as some people are charging £100 for it on eBay.
And the whole process started with one of my favourite tools, a simple hole punch. Someone could make 4 of these. They little pieces of plastic card got glued to the side of his feet, just to add some of those little details you see in some of the more modern sculpts. And the base? Well, that was just a little piece of XPS foam surrounded by skulls. Another base, just to add some height. What I think is an old Necron part salvaged from my bit box. And then about 60 odd skulls. But now I'm not keen on the way that his body and his legs fit together. It looks to me like his torso is leaning far too far forward. I really want him standing more upright, but still looking like he's charging. Fortunately, these old models were sculpted with really simple key and keyholes. So I figured the easiest solution would probably be the best solution. A few pieces of cut to size plastic card just to fit in the keyhole. A little bit of sanding just to create a bevel on one of the edges, otherwise I'm just extending the torso and it'll still be leaning forward. Now, I did mention earlier that this sculpture's 25 years old, and Gary here does have a pretty interesting history. His first appearance was in 1991, but it was only as a converted model. Hit pause right now to read this snippet from White Wolf 134. Second edition saw the introduction of an actual Ghazghkull model and his little mate Makari. 6 years later, we got the model I'm working with now, but no Makari. And we had to wait another 20 years until we got the current sculpt. That was a long time to wait, but at least we got the return of his wee mate. What I'm looking for in this project is somewhere in between the 3rd edition model and the 8th edition model. I love the idea of including some older sculpts in my army, and who better than Gary? But we have to do something about that pose. Oh, and when I keep referring to him as Gary, my wife dubbed him such because she had no idea how to say the name Ghazghkull, and it's just stuck. I'm looking for a putty, by the way, something to fill in his belly. And these are what I found, but I'm pretty sure they're all a good few years old. I went with the green stuff, just because I went with the green stuff. I mixed it up, rolled it into a sausage, used that to fill his belly hole, and then using a sculpting tool, I just poked and prodded until the gap had been filled, and it was somewhat flush with the top and the bottom half of his body. Now, as well as this being my first sort of proper go at kit bashing, it's also the first time I've done any sculpting on a miniature. And believe me, it gets a whole lot harder later on. Now to deal with those bloody arms. This pose reminds me of one of those old-fashioned wind-up toys, you know, the ones whose arms do this. With a little inspiration, we can do better than that. I really like the look of you, Gary's 4-cannon shooter. So I half-inched a massive cannon from my Necron bit spot. I lopped off 3 of the spikes, left 1 because, well, stabbing. I took the front end of the cannon off, just with a scalpel, nothing fancy, and replaced it with a bit of a Gatling gun that I have no idea where it came from. I added a couple of other little Ork trinkets just so it reads as an Ork gun, and I also added an exhaust to the top of the whole model because, well, new Gary's got one, so old Gary needs one.
What a wonderful world!
His other arm is a bit too static and a bit too small for my taste. I want something a little bit more dynamic. I did toy with the idea of actually having it pointing upwards, but I just settled on making a new one. But the real question was, what am I going to make it from? This is all the 1mm plastic card that I've got left, so I kind of need to be a little bit careful with my usage. But I do know I want the individual claws to be twice as thick. A little sprue glue and masking tape will make light work of gluing two of these panels together. And we can start figuring out exactly how we're going to build this massive claw. My solution was to start with more masking tape and just draw the shapes of the claws on the masking tape. And I wasn't sure what sort of shape I actually wanted, so I cheated? I mean, it's not cheating, it's just using what's out there. I just stole it straight off the Games Workshop website. I downloaded a copy of one of the new Gary sprues, a JPEG by the way, not an STL file, and then just edited it a little bit in a software similar to Photoshop so that I could make a cardboard mock-up of the idea that was in my head. Once I knew my idea was going to work, some careful cutting later and a little bit of sanding, and this is what I had. Each of these small claws has a hole in the middle, so when it comes to gluing them together and lining them up, with a little bit of super glue, I can put a cocktail stick right in the centre of the first hole in the first claw. And of course I'm doing this on some baking parchment so that the super glue doesn't glue everything together. And then the rest of the claws just get glued in place, but I'm using sprue glue this time. This will help obviously melt all the pieces of plastic together, but lining them up, it's an absolute breeze because I've got the cocktail stick. And then little bit by little bit, we end up with this. Now, I did say earlier on in the video that there was some more difficult sculpting to be done, and you'll probably notice I've already done it on here. I've sculpted into place his upper arms, and I did do it off camera because I have never really done it before. I had no idea what I was doing. It took forever, and it was all just complete guesswork. But here's how I did it. I started just by bulking out the armature wire with a little bit of green stuff and then letting that cure. For actually sculpting, these were the only tools I used. And I started by taking a small piece of green stuff, smushing it, if that's a word, into the kind of shape that I was looking for, and then sticking it to the cured piece of green stuff on the armature. And then using this roundy, pointy tool thing, I would use this then to roll the green stuff into its position and to smooth out any transition from one piece to the other. This piece of green stuff that I've added to the already cured bit is the muscle. Well, one of them. And once I've actually finished with this bit and got it in place, it's time to add another. This is very much a kind of speak properly. This is very much a rinse and repeat process. You're going to keep adding muscles until all the muscles are in place. And then to really bring out the definition between each muscle, I'm going to use this ball stylus. I think that's the proper term. Or a wee bore tool if you're going to put it in Scots. And we're just going to use this to roll the definition in between where the two muscles meet. I know what I'm showing you right now basically looks like a sugar puff.
2, 3, 4. Oh, I'm so pretty.
But this is the technique. It's really not that complicated, but it does take a little bit of practice. And for a first attempt, I'm pretty much okay with these arms. Particularly when you think you're probably not going to see them anyway. The reason why you're not going to see them is because, well, it needs armour.
So I've got this little pot full of spare parts and bits. But it was this piece that really stood out to me. That got glued to his left tricep and really helped inform how I went about building the rest of his armour. I made a pauldron for his top left shoulder. I made a pauldron for his left shoulder and then boxed in his claw like on you, Gary. Boxing in the claw was pretty straightforward, it's just a box. But actually building the pauldron was a lot more complicated because it's a complicated three-dimensional shape. My solution was actually pretty straightforward. I just did one piece at a time, starting from the top flat panel, and stuck them all into place using blue tack. And then covered each of these individual panels with a bunch of sprue glue and let that cure overnight. And then very, very carefully just removed this nice, now welded piece of plastic pauldron from the blue tack that secured it to the model in the first place. Then a little sanding just to tidy everything up, and all the pieces can be glued. For my first proper go at kitbashing, I'm really pleased with the way this guy's turned out. The value of this model, for me now, way surpasses the amount people on eBay want to charge you for it. I've learnt a whole load of new different techniques that I can apply across the board to crafting, and I highly recommend just diving in if you've never done any kitbashing before. Now, I do recognise that my paint scheme might not be to everybody's taste, but when you see the rest of my army and all the vibrant pinks and greens, old Gary here fits in just fine. And they even went that little bit further. We forgot about Makari, but in my army, his name is Malky. This video is actually the first in 3, all released at the same time, and all about Gary. If you enjoyed this one, here's a link to the second.